Welcome back everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about my flywheel cage and flywheel setup for my Stryfe. Now, in the last run I got over 208 FPS with just this alone. So we're going to talk about that and how I made it, how you can make it. It's all free download from Thingiverse, my profile. Now in some of my previous videos I had my Stryfe mod and it sounded like a blender. So this is my Nerf Stryfe. No, that's not supposed to sound good. That's supposed to sound like I've been trying too hard. Did a lot of shooting, hit a lot of people, destroyed the motors. Oh well. I took it apart. This is my artifacts cage, and the noise comes from this wobble here. It's just insane. Now, interestingly enough, the bottom is fine, just the top one. And I believe that happens because the inlet, I don't know if it's the right word, for the dart is actually fairly large, and the way the Stryfe works is it ends up, when you've got a whole lot of rounds in the magazine, it runs along the top, which is why I sanded down that piece there. And I'm pretty sure the dart comes in, hits the top motor first, which causes that to stall, and it also requires this wheel to push it down, so it's totally destroyed the bushing in that. Anyway, put that aside. It was just interesting if you'd watched my other videos. We have the normal Stryfe cage. Wow, what is the point? And I've ended up with wheels sort of this size, which is much bigger than the original ones, or if you like that. Even these black ones are a bit bigger. I went to a Open Flywheel Projects Stryfe cage and I made this a bit longer, which is the guide, except for that it managed to break off, even though I'd strengthened it. And I obviously added the barrel to it and the guide, mainly because the majority of the strength needs to be this way, because that's, as the dart comes through, it's going to flex away from it, and not having the top over here was going to make it significantly weaker. So I added that in, and obviously that means the accuracy is better, because that's, I think it's about 13 millimeters, might be 14. Yeah, it is 14. But obviously when the dart goes in, especially with flat wheels, they can come in off-centered or not. So that helps ensuring that the dart actually goes through the center. Now I did start with the 41.5 Open Flywheel project. I converted that to fit brushless motors, 2205s at 3000 kV, which look like this. The reason why I went for those is because I wanted the highest kV possible, and that's the highest I could find, because the wheels are quite small. Other brushless projects, I've seen that they end up with much bigger wheels, and then you can have a lower RPM motor and the surface velocity is still the same. So I needed a high velocity motor, so that's why I used that, and they're cheap as grass. So I tried it with a number of wheels. I had a lot of problems making wheels, and I'll talk about that now for the sake of people that want to make them. Now these are obviously not great. First of all, print them in 0.1 layer height, especially if you're doing curved wheels, to make this nice and smooth. I also started printing them eccentrically instead of the normal across the way, and I changed the start point where it normally does a layer, moves up, does a layer, and keeps going like that in exactly the same place, and this movement up at a constant location was leaving a little blob, and that made this not be able to be centered very well, because at one point it was obviously pushing the wheel away. So I made that random, and that really helped. However, ultimately my 3D printer is incapable of printing these perfectly round. It gets about 0.1-ish out, and that created a new problem because 0.1 of a 5mm hole is about 20%, I think. So that's actually quite a lot. That's probably not. Now someone can do the maths for me. It's probably not 20%. It sounds like an awful lot. That'll be 1mm. Anyway, you'll forgive me. This is not a maths channel. So I actually went to, instead of aligning the wheel to the motor through the center hole, I actually made this surface to be the size of the motor housing, and that pushed on like that, which meant that any slight inaccuracy was less of an impact because it was across a greater diameter. That also meant that there was a much less flex, because normally you'd be it would be, you apply leverage here, then transfer all the way up here, and ultimately to the hole there. And I found that this was actually getting a little bit bigger because of the movement, because you're applying a lot of force on this. So when I made it actually run on the inside of the motor, because it's a brushless outrunner, that was wonderfully perfect, because that just sat on the housing and then there was no flex or pushing, and it was a lot more circular. So that's enough about actually how to make them. I went to the Open Flywheel projects, get it right, 41.5mm cage, which I modified by adding the top bit and making a stronger one of those, which obviously didn't work out for me. Interesting thing to note is that it's not 41.5. The pedantic people out there will say it's actually 41.53mm apart. But whatever. However, I found that was a Nerf dart destroyer. Now, it could have been just me, and I do have very old darts, but it's about a 7.1mm gap between there, and it's just squeezing this so much and pulling that off. So I tried that for a while. I also tried some serrated wheels, which didn't work for me. Possibly if I had made them like the worker wheels, which I do have genuine worker wheels, they're actually pointy, that may have helped, but this didn't help me. So I went to curvature, and I progressively got more and more and more curvature. The thing I started with that. I then went to what's on here, and then I ended up with something like that. Now the idea behind that is that if you can grip the dart nicely, the entire dart, that means you're not applying pressure just to effectively one side of it and squeezing it. You're hopefully applying pressure to the entire dart, and so that wrecks the dart much less because you're pulling force from all directions. I kind of got, performance-wise, I kind of got stuck with this one here, because this had an interesting phenomenon where it actually pinches the foam through this little gap here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, probably not. And squeezes it out the top and the bottom. And that was an extremely good performer, because what's actually happening is that obviously it's gripping it fairly well around most of the size, but squeezing it out, and when the foam is that hole is squeezed out of it, it's actually quite stiff then, and the edges were getting squeezed flat between the two wheels. Unfortunately, what that does mean is that these outer wheels were scoring or scratching like quite a big slot in the dart, which, I mean, that's obviously not, that's 0 RPM, and you can't really probably see that, but it ends up kind of wrecking the side of the dart. I decided let's just try and fit the biggest wheels you could possibly fit in. which are these ones, and these are 40mm wheels, and they almost fitted in the Stryfe. Well, they kind of did, but it was pretty clear it was going to grind down the posts, the support posts being these. So I have ended up with this, which I've added some holes, by the way. I see some people adding cooling fans to their motors, and I'm like, well, you're spinning something at 40,000-ish RPM. Why can't you just use that? So yes, those holes are small, they're all angled, but we're not trying to build a plane. Don't want it to be shooting going, ah, I can't hold it. But you want to add some additional cooling, so that's what I've done there. And obviously on the back side, that's what a whole bunch of these holes are for the cooling. So that is about as big as you can possibly get in there. So, and that, if you can see, there is basically no gap, or a 0.4 gap between the wheels. And that goes very lovely through there. Beautiful. So this here is the gap between the motors are 40mm. The wheels are 39.6mm. Yes, that whole 0.4 really did help from this to actually not grind down the posts too much. And the outside diameter is 39.6. Oh yeah, sorry, I already said that. The inside diameter is 30.9. This curvature in here is 11mm of diameter, or which is not really that useful to you because you've only got half of it ish. So that's a 5.5mm radius. It has 4.25mm of dart hug. So that's the distance from this edge to the inside, the dart hug, and obviously you've got that on both sides. There's a 0.4mm gap between the two wheels, and that's really about it. And I get about 208 plus FPS. Now that is peak, not average, and the reason for that is because I cannot do an average anymore because I've completely destroyed all of my darts from so many jolly wheels and so many attempts that they're all pretty much stuffed. So I'm going to get some more wheels and get some more darts for you, and we'll do an average. But this certainly may be the highest FPS single flywheel Stryfe available. And it's actually fairly affordable. Oh yeah, as far as it actually fitting in, I haven't done the electrics, so I will do another video about electrics, because I haven't quite figured that out yet. Well, can't be that hard. It fits with the worker thing. What's a mahoozy? There we go, if we can actually get it on. Perfect fit. Just fits. Don't know why I'd use that one though. It works with my one, even better. Front tube adapter, you can download this. There's even a sawn off one. Because someone asked, so why not? Now the original one, it pretty much fits, but doesn't really. Like, it gets really, really close, like it is actually touching it. So if you can just sand this little bit down so it doesn't rub on it, it'll fit. So that'll be pretty sweet. Now that's enough wah-wahing, isn't it? Let's fire that bad boy up and fling a few darts through it. Oh yes, I forgot to mention that the distance from the inside of this wheel to the inside of that one, or the crush, or the static crush, is 9.1 millimeters. Now this has got nothing to do with the FDL2, I think that's it, unless my dyslexia has got those numbers and letters the wrong way around. But that is more crush than their one. It's got more curvature than the FDL. It's got more hug, which is from there to there, than the FDL. And of course it has no gap between the wheels. So let's fire that up, and hopefully I won't kill myself. I have my earmuffs on and my goggles on, and we're going to have a bit of a blast. Now, as I said, it's not in my blaster yet because I haven't done that yet, and I don't want you guys to wait. So here we go. There we go, I managed to survive that. No, I would not be normally shooting them against my garage wall. And that's why I'm shooting the 80s darts. But makes a good sound, doesn't it? Alright, well, hopefully you've enjoyed that. Hopefully you make it. Hopefully it works out for you. I will probably be making some more wheels to make it go faster, because you can never have too much FPS. Well, actually you can if you're running those limited rounds, but I don't play those limited games.